The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with the characteristic hum of universal translators working overtime. Representatives from 47 different species filled the massive amphitheater, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, telepathic pulses, and bioluminescent flashes. At the center of it all stood Admiral Zex Thari of the Hegemony Fleet, his forearms gesticulating wildly as he addressed the assembly. "The humans have named their latest warship," he announced, his voice dripping with barely contained amusement. "They call it the Fluffy Bunny." A wave of what could only be described as laughter rippled through the chamber. The Catherian delegates released clouds of sweet-smelling spores that indicated mirth. The crystalline Shardavi chimed in harmonic frequencies that translated to hilarity. Even the normally stoic void-touched allowed their shadowy forms to quiver with what passed for amusement among their kind. Council Speaker Morden, a towering insectoid whose species had ruled the galactic trade routes for millennia, clicked his mandibles in what humans would recognize as a chuckle. The humans continue to mystify us with their naming conventions. First the flying pickle, then the angry toaster, and now this. Do they not understand that ship names are meant to instill fear in their enemies? Admiral Zex Thari's scales shifted to a pale blue, indicating his species' version of mirth. Our intelligence suggests they find it amusing to name their most powerful vessels after seemingly harmless creatures or objects from their homeworld. The Fluffy Bunny is reportedly their newest Dreadnought-class ship, mounting enough firepower to crack a moon. In the human diplomatic section, Ambassador Sarah Chen sat quietly, her expression carefully neutral. She had learned long ago that explaining human humor to alien species was often an exercise in futility. Better to let them think humans were simply eccentric, rather than reveal the deeper psychological warfare at play. "Perhaps," suggested Councillor Vexillar of the Tri-Solar Empire, his tentacles writhing with barely suppressed glee, "we should compile a database of these amusing human ship names. I'm certain our military academies would find them useful for morale-building exercises." The suggestion was met with enthusiastic approval from several species. The idea that the humans, with their relatively recent introduction to galactic society, would provide comic relief was apparently irresistible to the older, more established civilizations. Ambassador Chen finally spoke, her voice calm and measured. "If I may, honored counselors, I should point out that human naming conventions often carry deeper meaning than might be immediately apparent to non-human observers." Admiral Zex Thari waved one of his hands dismissively. "Please, Ambassador, what possible strategic significance could Fluffy Bunny hold? Your species' tendency toward whimsy is well documented. We have reports of human vessels named Snuggle Bear, Happy Thoughts, and Cuddle Monster. Surely you cannot claim these represent serious military doctrine." Chen's smile was enigmatic. "I would never presume to lecture the Council on military matters. I merely suggest that underestimating human psychology has proven unwise for those who have attempted it in the past." The chamber erupted in fresh waves of alien laughter. The very idea that humans, who had been spacefaring for less than 2 centuries, could teach psychological warfare to species who had been conquering star systems since before Earth's sun had formed seemed absurd. Councillor Thekmon of the War Caste leaned forward, his armored carapace gleaming under the chamber's lights. "Ambassador Chen, with all due respect to your species' accomplishments, we have been studying warfare since your ancestors were climbing down from trees. The psychological impact of a ship's name is negligible compared to its actual firepower and the skill of its crew." "Of course, Counselor," Chen replied smoothly, "though I would note that the crew of the Fluffy Bunny consists entirely of human Marines who volunteered specifically to serve aboard a ship with that name." This gave some of the assembly pause. Human Marines had developed something of a reputation in the past 50 years, since humanity had joined the galactic community. They were known for their stubborn refusal to surrender, their tendency to achieve victory through tactics that other species considered impossible or insane, and their peculiar habit of becoming more dangerous the more desperate their situation became. Admiral Zex Thari, however, remained unimpressed. "Human bravado is well known, Ambassador. But bravado does not win wars. Superior technology, superior numbers, and superior tactics win wars. A ship named Fluffy Bunny is still just a ship, regardless of the courage of its crew." The hegemony had been the dominant military power in the galaxy for over 3,000 years. Their fleets had conquered systems, toppled empires, and reduced entire species to servitude. The idea that humans, with their laughably named ships and bizarre tactical doctrines, could pose any real threat was simply inconceivable. Chen nodded politely. "You are absolutely correct, Admiral. A ship is just a ship. Though I would mention that the Fluffy Bunny will be conducting joint training exercises with hegemony forces next month, as part of our mutual defense agreement. I'm sure your commanders will find the experience educational." As the session continued, the various species continued to share their amusement at human naming conventions. They traded stories of encounters with human vessels, each name more apparently ridiculous than the last. The Tickle Fight had reportedly asked for permission to dock at a Catherian station with a completely straight-faced transmission. The Pillow Fort had somehow managed to disable 3 pirate vessels without firing a single shot, though the details of how remained classified. What none of the assembled dignitaries realized was that Ambassador Chen's seemingly innocent comments were being recorded and transmitted back to human space. By the time the council session ended, every human military commander in the galaxy would know exactly how the major powers viewed their ships and their naming conventions. In human space, aboard the bridge of the UES Fluffy Bunny, Captain Maria Vasquez read the transmission from the council chambers with a grim smile. Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, their movements precise and practiced. The ship itself was a masterpiece of human engineering, bristling with weapon systems that pushed the boundaries of known physics. "Well, crew," Captain Vasquez announced, "it seems we have a reputation to live up to. How do you think we should introduce ourselves to the Hegemony Fleet next month?" Her first officer, Commander James Mitchell, grinned. "I think they're about to learn why laughing at human ship names is a very, very bad idea." The joint training exercises were scheduled to take place in the Kepler 442 system, a strategically important region that served as a buffer zone between human space and the outer territories. Admiral Zexathari commanded the Hegemony Task Force from his flagship, the Inevitable Conquest, a massive dreadnought that had seen victory in over 200 major engagements. As his fleet emerged from hyperspace, Zexathari felt the familiar satisfaction of commanding superior forces. 12 heavy cruisers, 36 destroyers, and his flagship formed a formation that had broken the backs of a dozen different civilizations. Today they would demonstrate to the humans what real military power looked like. "Sir," reported his tactical officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet." "Put it through," Zexathari commanded, expecting to see the human commander attempting to project authority from what was surely an inferior vessel. The view screen flickered to life, revealing Captain Vasquez on the bridge of the UES Fluffy Bunny. Behind her, Zexathari could see a crew working with calm professionalism, their movements suggesting years of training and experience. What struck him immediately was the complete absence of any humor or levity, despite their ship's ridiculous name. "Admiral Zexathari," Captain Vasquez said, her voice crisp and military precise. "This is Captain Maria Vasquez of the UES Fluffy Bunny. We're honored to participate in these exercises with the legendary Hegemony Fleet." Zexathari found himself momentarily at a loss for words. The human captain's tone was respectful, but carried an undertone he couldn't quite identify. Behind her, he could glimpse sophisticated displays and control systems that seemed surprisingly advanced for such a young spacefaring species. "Captain Vasquez," he replied, "the Hegemony looks forward to demonstrating our tactical superiority. I trust your Fluffy Bunny is prepared for intensive maneuvers." "Oh, we're prepared, Admiral," Vasquez smiled, and there was something predatory about the expression. "The Fluffy Bunny and her crew are very much looking forward to showing you what we can do." The transmission ended, and Zexathari turned to his tactical officer. "Display the human fleet composition." The holographic display showed the human formation, and Zexathari blinked in surprise. Instead of the expected handful of ships, the humans had brought a substantial force. The Fluffy Bunny was indeed a dreadnought-class vessel, but it was accompanied by ships with equally absurd names: Snuggle Bear, Happy Thoughts, Pillow Fort, Tickle Monster, and Cuddle Party. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported, "our sensors are having difficulty getting clear readings on the human vessels. They appear to be using some form of adaptive camouflage technology we haven't encountered before." This was concerning. The hegemony's sensor technology was among the most advanced in the galaxy, capable of detecting cloaked ships from several light-years away. If the humans had developed something that could fool their systems, it represented a significant technological advancement. "Begin the first exercise," Zexthari ordered. "Standard fleet engagement scenario. We'll see how these fluffy ships perform against real military tactics." The exercise began with the hegemony fleet taking an aggressive formation, their ships moving in the time-tested patterns that had dominated galactic warfare for millennia. Zexthari expected the humans to respond with their own textbook maneuvers, allowing him to demonstrate the superiority of experience and proper military doctrine. Instead, the human ship scattered in what appeared to be complete chaos. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, his voice confused, "the human vessels are... I'm not sure how to describe their movements. They appear to be completely random. On the tactical display, the human ships were indeed moving in patterns that defied conventional military logic. They weren't maintaining formation, they weren't protecting their flanks, and they certainly weren't presenting a unified front against the hegemony advance." "Perhaps they're having technical difficulties," suggested the communications officer. But as Zexthari watched, he began to notice something disturbing. Despite their apparently chaotic movements, none of the human ships were actually exposing themselves to concentrated fire. They moved like schools of fish, somehow coordinating their seemingly random actions to create a defensive pattern he'd never seen before. "Admiral," the tactical officer's voice carried a note of alarm. "We've lost contact with the merciless Victory." Zexthari spun to face the display. One of his heavy cruisers had simply vanished from sensors. Not destroyed, there had been no explosion, no debris. It was simply gone. "Find it," he ordered. "Full sensor sweep." Before his crew could comply, another ship disappeared. Then another. "How is this possible?" Zexthari demanded. "Our sensors should detect any cloaking technology in the galaxy." His intelligence officer was frantically working at his console. "Sir, I'm detecting massive gravitational anomalies throughout the engagement zone. It's as if space itself is being folded." The revelation hit Zexthari like a physical blow. The humans weren't using conventional cloaking technology. They were manipulating space-time itself, creating pockets of distorted space that their ships could slip into and out of at will. It was a technology that shouldn't exist, let alone be mounted on ships with names like Snuggle Bear. "Admiral," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from Captain Vasquez." The view screen showed the human captain again, but this time her expression was deadly serious. Behind her, Zexthari could see tactical displays showing the positions of every hegemony ship in real time. Despite the fact that half his fleet was supposed to be hidden by advanced stealth technology. "Admiral Zexthari," Vasquez said, "I hope you're enjoying the exercise so far. The Fluffy Bunny has been having quite a bit of fun playing hide-and-seek with your ships." "This is impossible," Zexthari found himself saying. "Our technology is thousands of years ahead of yours." Vasquez tilted her head slightly. "Is it, though? Admiral, let me share something with you. The Fluffy Bunny wasn't named as a joke. It was named after a toy that belonged to our chief engineer when she was a child. That toy was with her through the worst period of her life, when her colony was being bombarded by raiders and she had to hide in underground shelters for months." The captain's voice grew colder. She used to whisper to that bunny about all the ways she would make the raiders pay if she ever got the chance. When she designed the ship's weapon systems, she remembered those whispered promises. Care to guess what she built into the Fluffy Bunny's primary armament? On cue, space around the hegemony flagship began to distort. The stars themselves seemed to bend and twist as something massive decloaked directly above the inevitable conquest. "The Fluffy Bunny mounts a weaponized gravity generator," Vasquez continued conversationally. "It can create artificial black holes, manipulate space-time, and do things to physics that most species consider impossible. Our engineers call it the Snuggle Cannon." Zexthari stared at the readings pouring across his screens. The weapon signature was unlike anything in the hegemony databases. The humans had somehow weaponized gravitational forces on a scale that should have required the resources of an entire star system. "But here's the thing, Admiral," Vasquez said, and now her smile was back, cold and predatory. "We didn't name our ships to amuse you. We named them to remind us of home, of the things we're fighting to protect and of promises we made when we were helpless. Every human who serves aboard the Fluffy Bunny knows exactly what this ship represents. The transmission ended, and Admiral Zexathari found himself staring at a tactical situation that had become impossible. His superior fleet was being systematically outmaneuvered by ships with children's toy names, using technology that rewrote the rules of engagement. For the first time in his long military career, the Admiral began to understand that perhaps laughing at human ship names had been a terrible mistake. The exercise officially ended 6 hours later, but Admiral Zexathari knew the real lesson had been learned in the first 30 minutes. His fleet had been systematically dismantled by what should have been inferior human vessels. Every tactical doctrine, every strategic principle that had served the hegemony for millennia had proven useless against humanity's unconventional approach to warfare. As his ships regrouped in the aftermath, Zexathari requested a private communication with Captain Vasquez. He needed to understand what had just happened, and more importantly, he needed to assess whether humanity represented a threat or an opportunity for the hegemony. The communication established, Vasquez appeared on his personal view screen, her earlier predatory demeanor replaced by professional courtesy. Behind her, the bridge of the Fluffy Bunny hummed with quiet activity as her crew conducted post-exercise analysis. "Admiral," she said with a slight nod, "I hope the exercise was informative." "Informative is one word for it," Zexathari replied carefully. "Captain, I must ask directly. How long has humanity possessed technology capable of manipulating gravitational fields on this scale?" Vasquez leaned back in her command chair, considering her response. The theoretical groundwork was laid about 30 years ago by a physicist named Dr. Elena Kowalski. She was working on asteroid mining applications when she accidentally discovered how to create stable microsingularities. The military applications became apparent pretty quickly after that. 30 years, Zexathari repeated slowly. You developed gravitational manipulation technology in 30 years, when most species require centuries just to understand the basic principles. "Admiral, I think you're misunderstanding something fundamental about humanity," Vasquez said. "We don't develop technology the same way other species do. Most civilizations advance incrementally, building carefully on established foundations. Humans, we tend to take wild leaps into the unknown, especially when we're angry or desperate." She gestured toward the tactical display behind her, which still showed the exercise results. Dr. Kowalski wasn't trying to revolutionize physics. She was trying to figure out how to efficiently extract resources from asteroids to help terraform new colonies. But when the hegemony trade restrictions made traditional mining equipment too expensive for human colonies to afford, she got creative. This revelation disturbed Zexathari on multiple levels. The hegemony's trade policies were designed to keep younger species dependent on established powers for advanced technology. The idea that humans would respond to economic pressure by inventing entirely new categories of physics-defying technology was unprecedented. "Captain, you named your ship after a child's toy," he said, trying to steer the conversation towards something he could understand. "Surely you can see how this appears to other species." Vasquez's expression grew distant for a moment. "Admiral, let me tell you about Chief Engineer Sarah Kowalski, Dr. Elena's daughter. When she was 8 years old, her colony was attacked by raiders using hegemony-manufactured weapons sold on the black market. She spent 3 months hiding in underground bunkers clutching that stuffed bunny, listening to the bombardment above. The captain's voice took on a harder edge. During those 3 months, she made promises to that toy. Promises about what she would do if she ever got strong enough to fight back. When she joined the fleet and was assigned to work on her mother's gravitational manipulation technology, she requested that any ship mounting her weapons be named to honor those promises. Zexathari felt a chill run through his carapace. "You're saying the ship's name is intentional psychological warfare?" In a way, Vasquez nodded. "But it's more than that. Every human who serves aboard the Fluffy Bunny knows the story. They know what this ship represents. Not just advanced technology, but a promise kept. A promise that the helpless little girl hiding in a bunker would someday have the power to protect others." The Admiral was beginning to understand the deeper implications. "Your entire crew volunteers specifically for service aboard ships with these names." "That's correct. The waiting list to serve aboard the Fluffy Bunny is over 3 years long. Same for the Snuggle Bear, Happy Thoughts, and all the others. These aren't just ship assignments, Admiral. They're symbols of everything humanity fights for. Zexathari accessed his personal files, reviewing intelligence reports on human psychology and warfare doctrine. The pattern was there, clearly visible now that he knew what to look for. Humans didn't name their ships to intimidate enemies. They named them to remind themselves what they were fighting for. "Captain, I must ask about your tactical doctrine," he said. "Your ships moved in patterns that defied every principle of space combat we know. How do you coordinate such seemingly chaotic maneuvers?" Vasquez smiled genuinely for the first time in their conversation. "Admiral, have you ever watched human children play? I mean, really watch them?" The question seemed completely unrelated, but Zexathari had learned to pay attention to human non-sequiturs. "I have observed recordings, yes. Human children don't play the way other species young do. We don't follow rigid rules or established patterns. We make up games as we go along. We change the rules in the middle, and we adapt constantly to new situations. Our entire military doctrine is based on that principle." She gestured to her crew. "Every officer on this bridge grew up playing games with no fixed rules. They learned to think laterally, to see opportunities where others see chaos, and to turn apparent weaknesses into advantages. When you attacked us with traditional formation tactics, we responded the way human children respond to bullies. We refused to play by your rules." The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't just technologically dangerous. They represented a completely different approach to civilization itself. Where other species built rigid hierarchies and followed established protocols, humans seemed to thrive on improvisation and adaptation. "Admiral," Vasquez continued, "there's something else you should know. This exercise was recorded and transmitted throughout human space. By tomorrow, every human military academy will be analyzing how we dismantled a hegemony fleet. They'll use it as a training exercise for the next generation of officers." Zexathari's blood ran cold. "You're saying this will become standard human tactical doctrine?" "Not exactly. The beauty of human military thinking is that we never do the same thing twice. The next time you face human ships, we'll have learned from this engagement and developed entirely new tactics. We'll adapt, evolve, and surprise you all over again." The Admiral stared at the tactical display showing his thoroughly outmaneuvered fleet. For the first time in his military career, he was beginning to understand that the hegemony might not be facing just another young species seeking its place in the galaxy. They might be facing something far more dangerous, a species that viewed warfare as an art form rather than a science. And that drew its strength not from superior technology or numbers, but from an unwavering commitment to protecting the things they loved. "Captain Vasquez," he said slowly, "I believe my understanding of humanity has been inadequate." "Admiral," she replied with that predatory smile returning, "I think the entire galaxy's understanding of humanity has been inadequate. But don't worry, you're all about to get a much better education." News of the exercise results spread through the galaxy faster than a hyperspace transmission could carry them. Within 72 hours, every major intelligence agency, military command, and diplomatic corps had obtained detailed analysis of what had transpired in the Kepler 442 system. The reactions varied wildly depending on the species and their relationship with humanity. In the crystal spires of the Shardavi Collective, the Harmonic Council convened an emergency session. Their crystalline forms resonated with frequencies that would have shattered glass, expressing a level of agitation rarely seen in their normally serene species. "The humans have demonstrated capabilities that exceed our projections by several orders of magnitude," sang the prime resonance, their leader's harmonic voice carrying undertones of concern. "Our economic models assumed they would remain dependent on imported technology for at least another century." Sub-resonance Kethlin, responsible for military intelligence, produced a discordant note that indicated deep worry. "The gravitational manipulation technology alone represents a paradigm shift. If they can weaponize artificial singularities, traditional defensive strategies become obsolete." Meanwhile, in the bioships of the living fleet, the symbiont queens were conducting their own analysis through direct neural interface. Their organic vessels, grown rather than built, had sensors that operated on entirely different principles than mechanical technology. What they had detected during the exercise was even more disturbing than what conventional sensors had recorded. "The human ships aren't just using gravitational manipulation," pulsed Queen Vexara through the neural link shared by all symbiont commanders. "They're using it as a communication medium. Their entire fleet maintains constant gravitational contact. sharing information at quantum speeds. Queen Mordith's response carried notes of admiration mixed with apprehension. They've turned spacetime itself into a network. No wonder their coordination appeared chaotic to external observers. They were operating with a level of real-time tactical awareness that shouldn't be possible. But perhaps the most significant reaction came from an unexpected source. In the deep void between galaxies, something ancient stirred in response to the gravitational disturbances created by human technology. The Devourers had been dormant for millennia, but the unique gravitational signatures produced by humanity's weapons had awakened something that had been sleeping since before most current galactic civilizations had evolved. Back in human space, the success of the exercise had triggered a flurry of activity. Admiral Chen Rodriguez, the highest-ranking human military officer, was reviewing reports from across the fleet. The results exceeded even their most optimistic projections. The psychological impact alone has been worth years of conventional diplomacy, reported Intelligence Director Marcus Webb. Half the galaxy's military commands are requesting detailed specifications on our gravitational manipulation technology. The other half are trying to figure out how to defend against it. Admiral Rodriguez nodded, but her expression remained serious. What about the hegemony's response? Admiral Zexathari isn't stupid. He'll have learned more from that exercise than we intended to reveal. Actually, sir, Webb smiled, that might work in our favor. Zexathari submitted a detailed report to Hegemony Command, recommending immediate diplomatic outreach to humanity. He's arguing that trying to contain us militarily would be catastrophically expensive. This was exactly what humanity had hoped for. The exercise hadn't been designed to humiliate the hegemony, but to demonstrate that human military capabilities were far more advanced than anyone had realized. The goal was to shift galactic perception of humanity from amusing newcomers to potential threat that requires serious consideration. However, not everyone in human space was celebrating. Dr. Elena Kowalski, the physicist whose work had made the gravitational weapons possible, sat in her laboratory reviewing the exercise data with growing concern. Sarah, she said to her daughter, who was attending the meeting via quantum encrypted communication from the Fluffy Bunny, I'm seeing some anomalous readings in the gravitational field data from the exercise. Chief Engineer Sarah Kowalski appeared on the holographic display, her expression shifting from pride to concern. What kind of anomalies? The gravitational waves we generated didn't just dissipate normally. They're propagating through higher dimensional space in ways our models don't predict. I'm detecting echo patterns that suggest our waves interacted with something massive in extragalactic space. The implications made Sarah's blood run cold. The gravitational manipulation technology had been thoroughly tested, but always within the relatively quiet space of the solar system. Using it in the middle of galactic space, with all the complex gravitational interactions between stars and dark matter, had apparently produced unexpected effects. Mom, are you saying we might have sent some kind of signal into deep space? I'm saying we did send a signal, definitely. What concerns me is that something appears to have responded. The conversation was interrupted by an emergency alert from the Galactic Early Warning Network. Every species in the galaxy maintained sensors pointed toward extragalactic space, watching for the return of various threats that had menaced the galaxy in the past. What those sensors were now detecting made every previous threat seem trivial by comparison. This is Galactic Command to all vessels and installations, the automated message began. We are detecting massive gravitational disturbances in the void between our galaxy and Andromeda. Initial analysis suggests artificial origin. All military forces are advised to prepare for potential extragalactic contact. Admiral Rodriguez felt her stomach drop as she read the full report. The gravitational disturbances were enormous, larger than anything natural short of galactic collision. More concerning, they were accelerating toward the Milky Way at a significant fraction of light speed. Ma'am, Director Webb said quietly, we're receiving priority communications from 17 different species. They all want to know if our gravitational weapons might have triggered this. The Admiral closed her eyes for a moment, considering the magnitude of what might be approaching. Get me a direct line to Captain Vasquez aboard the Fluffy Bunny. If we accidentally woke something up, we're going to need every advantage we can get. As the communication established, Vasquez appeared on screen with her characteristic calm professionalism. But when Rodriguez explained the situation, even the unflappable captain's composure cracked slightly. "Admiral, are you telling me that our exercise might have attracted the attention of something from outside the galaxy?" "That's exactly what I'm telling you, Captain. Dr. Kowalski believes our gravitational manipulations created some kind of beacon effect that propagated through higher dimensional space. We may have just announced humanity's location to something that's been waiting in the dark between galaxies." Vasquez was quiet for a long moment, her tactical mind clearly working through the implications. "Ma'am, what are our orders?" "Continue normal operations for now, but be prepared for anything. If something is coming in response to our gravitational signature, there's a good chance it's going to be interested in the ship that generated the strongest signals." "Understood, Admiral. The fluffy bunny will be ready." As the communication ended, Rodriguez reflected on the irony of the situation. Humanity had just demonstrated to the galaxy that their seemingly harmless ship names concealed devastating military capabilities. Now they might face the ultimate test of whether those capabilities would be enough to protect not just humanity, but the entire galaxy from whatever was answering their inadvertent call from the void. The galaxy had laughed when humans named their ship Fluffy Bunny. Soon, they might all be praying that the Fluffy Bunny and her sisters would be enough to save them from the consequences of that laughter. The first signs of the approaching threat became visible to conventional sensors 3 weeks after the initial gravitational detection. What emerged from the darkness between galaxies defied every known principle of spaceship design and physics. The vessels, if they could be called that, appeared to be made of crystallized dark matter, formed into geometric shapes that hurt to look at directly. Admiral Zexathari found himself in the unprecedented position of requesting human assistance. The hegemony's most powerful weapons had proven completely ineffective against the approaching fleet during long-range test firings. Energy weapons passed through the dark matter constructs without effect. Kinetic projectiles were absorbed and converted into additional mass, and even quantum torpedoes simply vanished upon contact. "Admiral Rodriguez," he said during the emergency Joint Command Conference, "our preliminary analysis suggests these entities operate on principles we don't understand. Your gravitational manipulation technology may be the only weapon system that can interact with their dark matter composition." The human admiral studied the tactical data flowing across her screens. The approaching fleet numbered in the thousands, each vessel larger than anything in the galactic inventory. Worse, they were accelerating as they approached, suggesting either incredible energy reserves or propulsion systems that violated conservation of momentum. "Admiral Zexathari, we appreciate the hegemony's confidence in human technology," Rodriguez replied carefully. "But I have to point out that we've only tested our gravitational weapons against normal matter. We have no idea if they'll be effective against whatever these things are made of." From the crystalline communication node representing the Shardavi Collective, Prime Resonance added their concerns. "Our harmonic analysis of the approaching vessels suggests they are not truly alive as we understand life, nor are they purely mechanical. They appear to exist in a state that transcends the normal matter-energy paradigm." Captain Vasquez, attending the conference from the bridge of the Fluffy Bunny, had been studying the sensor data with her characteristic intensity. "Admirals, I'm seeing something in their approach pattern that might be relevant. They're not heading for any major population centers or military installations. Their trajectory will bring them directly to the Kepler 442 system. The location of our joint exercise," Zexathari realized. "They're following the gravitational signature back to its source." Dr. Elena Kowalski, participating via quantum link from her laboratory, had been running calculations throughout the conference. "If they're tracking our gravitational emissions, then they're probably looking for the source of the technology. The question is whether they consider it a threat to be eliminated or a technology to be acquired." "Only one way to find out," Captain Vasquez said grimly. "The Fluffy Bunny will intercept them at the edge of the system. If they want to examine our gravitational manipulation technology, they can start with our primary weapons array." Admiral Rodriguez felt a chill at the casual way Vasquez discussed engaging an unknown extragalactic threat, but she also recognized the tactical wisdom in the approach. If the entities were following the gravitational signature, they would expect to find its source. Better to control that encounter than wait for them to arrive at inhabited worlds. "Captain, you'll have support from the rest of the human fleet, plus any allied vessels willing to participate," Rodriguez decided. But I want you to understand this isn't a standard engagement. We have no idea what these entities are capable of or what they want. Vasquez nodded, but her expression carried that familiar predatory confidence. Understood, Admiral. Though I should mention that my crew has been analyzing the entity's approach vectors. They're moving in perfect mathematical formations, too perfect for natural behavior. Whatever they are, they think like machines or computers. This observation sparked something in Chief Engineer Sarah Kowalski's mind. Captain, if they're following pure mathematical logic, then they might be vulnerable to chaos theory principles. Our gravitational weapons don't just manipulate space-time, they introduce quantum uncertainty into local gravitational fields. Dr. Elena Kowalski's voice carried excitement. Despite the dire circumstances, Sarah's right. Mathematical entities that rely on predictable physical laws might have trouble adapting to quantum-level gravitational fluctuations. It's like introducing random variables into a perfectly ordered equation. Admiral Zexathari listened to the human exchange with growing amazement. Even facing an unprecedented threat, they were already developing theoretical countermeasures based on their understanding of their own technology. The hegemony's approach would have been to gather more data, consult with experts, and formulate careful strategies over weeks or months. Humans were apparently capable of adaptive theorizing in real time. Very well, he said. The hegemony fleet will provide long-range support and evacuation assistance for civilian populations. But Admiral Rodriguez, I must ask, if your gravitational weapons prove ineffective, what is humanity's contingency plan? Captain Vasquez answered before the Admiral could respond. Admiral Zexathari, humans don't really do contingency plans the way other species do. We prefer what we call aggressive improvisation. If Plan A doesn't work, we'll make up Plan B on the spot. If Plan B fails, we'll try something completely insane for Plan C. The hegemony Admiral's scales shifted to a pale green color, indicating extreme confusion. Captain, that is not a military doctrine. That is barely controlled chaos. Exactly, Vasquez smiled. And chaos is something humans excel. The conference ended with humanity's fleet moving to intercept positions while the other galactic powers prepared defensive positions around major population centers. The Fluffy Bunny took point, accompanied by her sister ships Snuggle Bear, Happy Thoughts, Pillow Fort, and Cuddle Monster. Their ridiculous names now carried a different weight. They weren't just psychological warfare against galactic powers. They were humanity's defiant response to the unknown terrors of deep space. As the human fleet reached the intercept coordinates, the full scope of the approaching threat became clear. The dark matter entities moved in perfect geometric formations that shifted and flowed like living mathematics. Each vessel pulsed with energies that existed partially outside normal spacetime, creating sensor readings that made experienced tactical officers question their instruments. All ships. This is Captain Vasquez, came the transmission across the human fleet. Remember what these ships represent. Every one of our vessels is named for something innocent, something worth protecting. Today we find out if love and determination can triumph over cold mathematical perfection. On the bridge of the Fluffy Bunny, Chief Engineer Sarah Kowalski watched the tactical displays with intense focus. The stuffed bunny that had given the ship its name sat in a place of honor on her engineering console, a reminder of the terrified child who had once made desperate promises in an underground bunker. Captain, she reported, gravitational manipulation systems are online and ready. All quantum uncertainty generators are primed. The Snuggle cannon is loaded and ready to show these entities what human physics can do. The first dark matter vessel entered weapons range, its crystalline structure refracting light in impossible directions. As it approached, it began transmitting what could only be described as pure mathematics, equations, and formulas that described the fundamental forces of the universe with precision that exceeded current galactic understanding. They're trying to communicate, reported the communications officer. The transmissions appear to be mathematical proofs demonstrating their mastery of universal physical laws. Captain Vasquez studied the alien mathematics for a moment, then smiled. Communications transmit our response. What should I send, Captain? Send them the lyrics to Twinkle Twinkle Little Star followed by a recipe for chocolate chip cookies. Let's see how their perfect mathematical minds handle human irrationality. As the transmission went out, the dark matter vessel's perfect geometric patterns began to fluctuate slightly. For the first time since entering the galaxy, The mathematical entities encountered information that didn't fit their universal equations. The real battle was about to begin. And humanity was about to teach the universe that sometimes the most powerful force in existence isn't perfect mathematics or advanced technology. It's the chaotic, unpredictable, and absolutely stubborn refusal of humans to accept that anything is impossible. The response to humanity's deliberately nonsensical transmission was immediate and dramatic. The lead dark matter vessel's perfect crystalline structure began displaying rapid fluctuations, its mathematical precision wavering as it attempted to process information that defied logical categorization. The effect rippled through the entire fleet as each entity tried to incorporate cookie recipes and children's songs into their understanding of universal order. "Captain," the tactical officer reported with barely contained amazement, "their formation coherence is breaking down. They're confused." Vasquez watched the sensor displays as thousands of mathematically perfect vessels began moving in slightly less perfect patterns. It was like watching a computer virus spread through a network, except the virus was human irrationality. "All ships," she broadcast to the human fleet, "prepare to demonstrate why chaos theory was invented by humans. Commence Operation Pillow Fight." What followed was unlike any space battle in galactic history. Instead of engaging with conventional tactics, the human ships began executing maneuvers that appeared completely random. The Snuggle Bear performed a perfect barrel roll through a debris field for no tactical reason. Happy Thoughts began broadcasting Earth's greatest hits collection while spinning like a top. Pillow Fort started playing a children's game called Tag with 3 dark matter vessels simultaneously. The mathematical entities, designed to predict and counter logical military strategies, found themselves facing opponents who weren't following any strategy at all. Every time they calculated the optimal response to human actions, the humans would do something completely different that made their calculations meaningless. "Chief Kowalski," Captain Vasquez called out, "now would be an excellent time to introduce these entities to the concept of quantum uncertainty." Sarah Kowalski's hands moved across her controls with practiced precision. "Snuggle cannon charging, Captain. All gravitational uncertainty generators at maximum output." The Fluffy Bunny's primary weapon system began distorting space-time around the lead dark matter vessel. But instead of creating a stable gravitational field, the weapon introduced random quantum fluctuations that made the local laws of physics slightly different from moment to moment. Gravity might be stronger or weaker, time might flow faster or slower, and the fundamental constants that governed reality became suggestions rather than rules. For entities that existed as pure mathematical concepts, this was catastrophic. Their carefully structured forms began to destabilize as the quantum uncertainty spread through their dark matter matrix. They were experiencing something no mathematical equation could account for: genuine randomness at the quantum level. "Direct hit," reported the tactical officer. "The target's structural cohesion is breaking down. Its mathematical precision is dropping to, well, human levels." But the most devastating attack came from an unexpected source. The Cuddle Monster, humanity's newest vessel, had been loaded with what its crew jokingly called the ultimate weapon against logical thinking, a complete database of human internet memes, dad jokes, and social media posts. "This is Commander Patricia Wong aboard the Cuddle Monster," came the transmission, "preparing to deploy our special payload. All ships brace for maximum cognitive dissonance." The Cuddle Monster began broadcasting humanity's accumulated collection of absurd humor directly at the dark matter fleet. Thousands of jokes that only made sense to humans, memes that required cultural context to understand, and puns that depended on language quirks specific to Earth flooded the entity's communication networks. The effect was immediate and spectacular. Dark matter vessels began displaying erratic behavior as they attempted to process humor that operated on principles completely alien to mathematical logic. Some began rotating aimlessly. Others started transmitting what appeared to be attempts at creating their own jokes, resulting in mathematically perfect but completely unfunny combinations of words. "Captain," Chief Kowalski reported with glee, "I'm reading massive system failures throughout their fleet. They're trying to incorporate humor into their mathematical frameworks, and it's causing cascade failures in their logic systems." Admiral Rodriguez, monitoring the battle from human command, watched in amazement as humanity's most absurd tactical doctrine proved effective against a threat that had seemed impossible to combat. All human vessels continue current operations. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. On the bridge of the Fluffy Bunny, Captain Vasquez allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The battle was far from over, but humanity had proven once again that their greatest strength wasn't superior technology or overwhelming firepower, it was their ability to think in ways that no other species could predict or counter. Communications, she ordered. Open a channel to the lead entity. Let's see if we can establish actual dialogue now that we've gotten their attention. The transmission that came back was unlike anything the mathematical entities had sent before. Instead of pure equations, it contained attempts at human language mixed with mathematical concepts, creating a bizarre hybrid communication that suggested the entities were trying to adapt to human irrationality. Greetings. Query. Chocolate chip cookies. Universal constant. Humor. Function undefined. Request. Explanation of twinkle. Star relevance to gravitational manipulation. Captain Vasquez smiled. Translation. They want to understand how we think. Communications respond with a formal diplomatic greeting, but include the recipe for making friendship bracelets and ask them if they've ever had a pet. As the exchange continued, it became clear that the mathematical entities weren't hostile. They were explorers, seeking to understand and catalog all forms of intelligence in the universe. They had followed humanity's gravitational signature because it represented a type of physics they hadn't encountered before, only to discover a species that operated on principles that defied their understanding of rational behavior. The battle had effectively ended. Replaced by the strangest first contact scenario in galactic history, humanity had managed to confuse an advanced extragalactic civilization into peaceful communication by being exactly what they had always been: chaotic, irrational, and absolutely impossible to predict. But as the immediate threat passed, new challenges emerged. The mathematical entities weren't the only ones who had noticed humanity's gravitational manipulations. Across the galaxy, other ancient powers were beginning to stir, drawn by the realization that a young species had developed technology that could reshape the fundamental forces of reality. The galaxy had laughed when humans named their ships after toys and childhood comforts. Now those same ships had proven capable of defeating threats from beyond the galaxy itself. But as word spread of humanity's victory, new enemies and challenges would emerge, each one requiring humanity to prove once again that their greatest weapon wasn't their technology. It was their uniquely human ability to turn chaos into victory. 6 months after the encounter with the mathematical entities, the galaxy had fundamentally changed. The creatures from beyond the galactic rim had established what could generously be called an embassy in the outer system, a collection of geometric structures that existed partially outside normal spacetime and served as a base for their ongoing study of irrational intelligence phenomena, which was their term for human behavior. Admiral Zexthari found himself in the surreal position of attending regular, diplomatic meetings with beings that communicated through pure mathematics and had recently become obsessed with Earth cuisine. Their latest request had been for a complete chemical analysis of pizza, which they believed might contain the key to understanding human strategic thinking. Ambassador Chen, he said during their latest briefing, I must admit that the hegemony's intelligence services are completely baffled by recent developments. Your species has somehow convinced extragalactic mathematicians to become friends. Ambassador Sarah Chen, who had been promoted following humanity's unexpected diplomatic success, smiled as she reviewed the latest reports. Admiral, I think the word you're looking for is adopted. The entities have basically decided that humans are the most interesting phenomenon they've encountered in several million years of exploration. This was an understatement. The mathematical entities, who had grudgingly accepted the human designation of the mathletes, after determining that species names were another form of irrational human behavior worth studying, had begun incorporating human concepts into their perfect mathematical frameworks. The results were both fascinating and terrifying. They've started telling jokes, Chen continued. Admittedly, their humor operates on 17-dimensional mathematical principles that require advanced calculus to understand the punchlines. But they're definitely trying. Captain Vasquez, attending the meeting from the Fluffy Bunny's new permanent station at the edge of human space, added her observations. The mathletes have also begun requesting cultural exchanges. Last week they asked if we could teach them about the strategic applications of comfort food. Apparently, they've calculated that human performance improves by 23.7% when consuming chocolate chip cookies. But the real revelation came from Dr. Elena Kowalski, whose gravitational manipulation research had taken unexpected directions since the first contact. The entities have shared some of their mathematical frameworks with us. Their understanding of physics makes our most advanced theories look like kindergarten arithmetic. But here's the interesting part. They're asking us to help them develop intuitive mathematics based on human gut feelings. Admiral Zex. Thari's scales shifted through several colors, indicating extreme confusion. They want humans to teach them. Guessing? Essentially, yes, Dr. Kowalski confirmed. They've realized that human gut instincts often arrive at correct solutions faster than mathematical analysis. They want to understand how we make accurate decisions based on incomplete information and emotional responses. The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't just defeated an extragalactic threat. They had discovered that their supposedly primitive, emotional responses and irrational thinking patterns were actually advanced problem-solving, techniques that even mathematically perfect beings wanted to learn. However, not everyone in the galaxy was pleased with these developments. The success of human diplomatic and military operations had triggered what intelligence analysts were calling the Great Reevaluation. Every major power was reassessing their understanding of human capabilities and potential. Admiral Rodriguez. Director Webb reported during their classified briefing, "We're detecting increased military activity throughout hegemony space. They're not hostile, but they're definitely repositioning forces to monitor human activities more closely." The Admiral studied the intelligence reports with growing concern. "They're afraid of us. Can you blame them?" Webb replied. "In less than a century, humans went from pre-space flight to having allied extragalactic entities and weaponized physics. From their perspective, we're either the galaxy's greatest opportunity or its greatest threat." This assessment proved accurate when the Galactic Council convened an emergency session to address what they termed the human question. Every major species sent their highest-ranking officials, and for the first time in galactic history, the mathematical entities requested permission to attend as observers. The session began with Counselor Vexlar of the Tri-Solar Empire presenting a motion that shocked even the human delegation. "Honorable Counselors, I propose that humanity be granted immediate senior membership status in the Galactic Council, with full voting rights and Security Council representation." The chamber erupted in multilingual chaos. Several species objected that humans were too young and unpredictable for such responsibility. Others argued that any species capable of befriending extragalactic entities clearly deserved recognition. The mathletes contributed to the discussion by transmitting a 17,000-page mathematical proof that humanity's chaotic behavior patterns were actually optimal solutions to complex strategic problems. Ambassador Chen rose to address the assembly, her voice carrying clearly through the universal translators. "Honorable counselors, humanity appreciates this recognition, but we must be honest about who we are. We will never be a conventional galactic power. We will continue to name our ships after children's toys, develop weapons that violate physics, and solve problems in ways that make no logical sense." She gestured toward the observation section where the mathletes maintained their geometric presence. "Our friends from beyond the galaxy have taught us something important, that logic and chaos aren't opposites, they're partners. The universe is vast and full of challenges that require both mathematical precision and creative insanity to solve." Admiral Zexithari, representing the hegemony, stood to respond. "Ambassador Chen, the hegemony has learned to respect human capabilities, but we must ask, what assurance can you give that humanity will use its power responsibly?" Captain Vasquez, attending virtually from the Fluffy Bunny, provided the answer. "Admiral, let me tell you about the newest ship in the human fleet. She's called the Group Hug, and she's designed specifically for humanitarian missions and disaster relief. Her primary weapon system is a gravitational manipulator designed to stabilize collapsing structures and rescue people from disasters." She smiled with characteristic confidence. "Humanity doesn't want to conquer the galaxy, Admiral. We want to protect it. Every ship in our fleet is named after something we love, something innocent, something worth defending. That's not going to change no matter how powerful our technology becomes. The vote, when it came, was unanimous. Humanity was granted senior membership in the Galactic Council, not because they had proven themselves to be like other species, but because they had proven themselves to be uniquely, irrepressibly human. As the session ended and representatives began filing out, Admiral Zex Thari approached Ambassador Chen with a request that would have been unthinkable 6 months earlier. "Ambassador," he said quietly, "the hegemony would like to commission human engineers to design our next generation of starships. We've realized that our naming conventions have been inadequate." Chen raised an eyebrow. "What did you have in mind?" "We were thinking perhaps friendship or hope or warm cookies," he suggested tentatively, as laughter filled the chamber. Real, genuine laughter from dozens of different species. The mathematical entities transmitted their own form of amusement, an equation that proved, beyond any doubt, that the optimal name for a starship was indeed something that made you smile. The wee galaxy had laughed when humans named their ship the Fluffy Bunny. Now they understood that humanity's greatest strength had never been their technology or their tactics. It was their absolute refusal to let the universe make them cynical, their determination to fight for joy and innocence and love, even in the face of threats from beyond the stars themselves. And somewhere in the void between galaxies, other ancient powers took notice of the young species that had turned mathematics into friendship and chaos into hope. They began their own journeys toward the Milky Way, drawn not by threat or opportunity, but by curiosity about the beings who had proven that the most powerful force in the universe might just be an 8-year-old girl's promise to a stuffed bunny that someday no one would have to hide in the dark and be afraid ever again.